welcome to the Dancast. It's a privilege to be here today with Bob Collins, a very experienced diver, and he's an SDI Instructor Ambassador today and wears many other hats in the diving industry. And so I'd like to just start off with talking about your background in diving and how you got started.
I actually started diving while I was in high school, uncertified. Through a series of events, I became a certified diver. Actually joined the Navy before I got out of high school. That was a Vietnam era. And so went in the Navy and enjoyed diving. I was not a hard hat diver. I dove as a scuba diver in the Navy and, of course, had other jobs. Back then, we actually many times had two jobs. And so that's really what, I enjoyed throughout my career is basing my travels with the Navy, many places all over the world from Philippines, Mediterranean, Indian Ocean, Diego Garcia, just a lot of different travels and a lot of different adventures. So that's probably my story, is being able to be in so many different places, seeing so many different types of diving, because I've experienced double hose regulators, which is kind of fun. I've still got one of those single hose. I've got a set of old Aqualung triples that Cousteau and them had, stuff like that. Still wear a dive watch, a Doxa dive watch that I got in 1971. Stuff like that really made my life in diving so rich. And I've been everything from just a diver through master instructor and such with most of the alphabet agencies out there. So I've had the chance and the ability to see training in many different methodologies and psychology of training and such, the good and the bad. So I feel like, today in diving, especially, and I'm going to give Dan a shout out because I'm a big Dan fan. And how about that? Dan fan, does that work? And being able to kind of decipher the training psychology out there through the different agencies. As a matter of fact, I'm speaking tomorrow here at the show about being an successful independent instructor, because I've been a shop instructor, I've been an independent instructor, and I kind of know the ins and outs and kind of what to do and what not to do, and how to be successful as an independent. And that's one thing that I have seen in the agencies. They'll teach you to be an instructor, but many times they won't teach you to how to actually have a successful training business. So that's kind of where I come from for this situation I'm in now in the diving business. I'm the director of training for the Diver Supply Organization. I'm the director of sales development for HOG, Highly Optimized Gear. And I have the ability to have a fairly nice YouTube channel that I try to put forward as a venue to tell people about things. If you've ever watched my channel, I don't sell people, I tell people. And people, from what they've, even here on the show floor, people come up, hey Bob, I watch you and I appreciate it and stuff. It's very humbling for me, Elena, very humbling, because I'm not, may not seem like it, but I'm not really a verbose person, I don't think. But you may see me differently, but I appreciate it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I think just thinking about how much you've seen training evolve over time. Could you walk me through that a bit? Because I know, the current open water model we have is very similar across agencies. How was it, looking back several decades? Was it similar, or how have things changed? And do you think that's been for better or worse?
In the past, it seemed like there was a much looser realm within training, and I'm talking years ago. Now, I would say in the past 20 years, things have become much more orchestrated, I'm going to say. Some of it's been kind of goofy, and I'll name one. I won't name the agency, but there used to be this thing called a smiley frowny slate, and I always thought that was kind of strange to try to get a student after every skill to mark a slate and saying, I'm happy with this or I'm not happy with this. I mean, yeah, it's kind of interesting, but it didn't last for long. Mm-hmm. But I think standards and procedures must be paid attention to and adhered to, because today we've heard about all these terrible things that go on. And if an instructor will be straightforward, number one, with his student, and I think one of the issues that instructors tend to forget is it's not about you. It's not about the instructor. It's about the diver. And you got to think on that side of the mask. And when somebody comes in and they're backplating wing and they're, all this macho sort of stuff, and they're teaching 14-year-olds or scared 55-year-olds, you got to remember it's about them and what's standard within the industry. Yellow hose regulators, jacket BCs, and you're flinging backplating wings and long hose and yellow necklaces and blah, blah, blah. I think you kind of follow where I'm going with that. So I've seen, yes, the goods and the bads. I think today we're in the goods. Mm-hmm. And I think the mass majority of the agencies are in the good. But the instructors need to remember the standards and procedures. You cannot skip on those. And don't be afraid to tell somebody that can't clear a mask, I'm sorry, but I cannot certify you until you master mask. I'm just using mask clearing as one of the more, critical skills. It's simplistic for most of us, but for some people, it's that hurdle that, they've been thinking about ever since they thought about getting certified. Mm-hmm. So I guess that would be my advice, is just for new instructors and instructors, remember, it's not about the instructor, it's about the student. And don't be afraid to tell a student, you're going to need additional practice in the pool before I'm ready to take you to the open water realm. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
that's, to me, that's big. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you kind of have touched on the standards and procedures and, being willing to say no to a student or, push them to, do additional training and practice rather than just certifying. So what other qualities do you think make an instructor, truly exceptional?
Listening. It's like, I like to talk, you can tell. But you've got to ask your students, how they're doing in their academics. Don't be afraid to communicate with them. Email's wonderful. Check on them as they're doing their academics. If they do a chapter 15 times, you might want to talk to them. Give them a call. Hey, I've seen you having a little issue with your online academics. And yeah, there's a lot of back and forth about, classroom work, book work, online academics. there's a lot of variables there, and that could be a whole different show. But, you know, being willing to talk to your students and ask them, you know, what your experience is, you know, what do you have in trouble? Maybe you're having an issue just understanding equalizing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it sounds so simple for most of us, but for some people, they just don't get it that with the reg in your mouth, you got a hole in your
Mm-hmm.
mouth. And trying to blow pressure against your ears, you can't just, you know, you got to block your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
That really takes talking to somebody, because you'll see it in their face and go, oh, yeah, I get it
A
now.
light bulb.
You know, so communicating is critical. Please don't teach on your knees. Please don't teach on your knees. And use a good methodology, a step-by-step methodology to take your kindergartners up to college level.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't start them with college level physics computer in kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
So does that kind of work for you?
Yes.
Okay.
And I do wonder, so if someone's considering becoming an instructor, maybe or a dive master, what signs or what makes you, at what level do they become qualified in your eyes, as far as, is it number of dives or certain skills they perfected, or when is a diver ready to go to the professional route if they'd like to?
No, it's such a great question, and I have people ask me that all the time. And we, in the industry, we hear this zero to hero thing, and I called it, we have these situations where divers are put through, I kind of call them puppy mills. You know, I think that's a deficit to have somebody go through a puppy mill instructor training.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's different. You know, when somebody comes in, they might be the best tech diver in the world, and they come in and they say, hey, I want to be an instructor. And I get ready. I always do a skill evaluation to begin with. Well, they're great as far as diving, but then when you start talking to them about teaching diving, it's a different realm to teach diving than to just be a good diver.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say there's not really a number. Standards say there's a number, which needs to be paid attention to, but an evaluation as to somebody's rescue ability during the dive master. During the dive master course, you're supposed to evaluate somebody's rescue ability. Well, that person may have been a public safety diver that took the rescue course, and really their rescue course was a recovery course. It's two different things. So probably evaluating people's skill as they step into the dive master and or the instructor realm, and just being honest with them about maybe, let's take a look at a dive master program that's not 8 or 7 days long. Be a fly in the water with, different experienced instructors. Because I've seen instructors tell divers to never touch a right shoulder dump unless it's an emergency. Really? I mean, the right shoulder dump's one of the most effective dumps on a BC. So why in the world would you would tell people to never touch it? But I've heard that before. And I've had people come in to do instructor training, IDCs, and they honestly don't have the skills of a dive master. And rating somebody as a dive master just because they worked on a dive boat and never worked with dive students in the beginning, when they're scared as they're just they're scared out of their wits. But all that you've worked with is experienced divers on a boat. Maybe, that kind of needs to be kind of softened out a little bit as far as that experience and such. So
I'd like to return, I know you are presenting on and the idea of independent instructors. So for someone who's not familiar with the concept, what's the difference between an instructor with a dive shop and an independent instructor, and why might an instructor decide to go independent?
again, it's a great question. Probably since COVID and in the past few years, especially with the internet and Amazon and Facebook and Walmart and blah, 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 all these different realms of internet sales, a lot of the shops have closed. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that the instructors that worked with the shops have disappeared. They're still around. People who live in Broken Bow, Oklahoma, they still want to be able to learn to scuba dive so they can go to the Caribbean or whatever it happens to be on vacation. Those people are still there. So who was a shop instructor at one time is now an independent instructor. So there's only two kinds of instructors: a shop instructor that might become an independent, or an independent that might become a shop instructor. So understanding the realm of each, one, you're going to be told when to do, what to do, how you're going to get paid, how you're going to advertise, or, you're at the whim of the shop or shop management per se. Whereas an independent, you got to figure out, okay, I need to do this website, how much am I going to spend? What kind of advertising? Do I need cards? Do I need my own equipment? Because as an independent, you go to DEMA, you walk in certain manufacturers' booths, and you say, I'm an independent. Well, they shake your hand and say, thanks for visiting. Whereas if you come to HOG, then we embrace the independent instructor, and they're able to sell equipment directly to their students because insurance has gotten expensive and membership has gotten more expensive. And if all you're counting on is just your training proceeds and net profit from that, then you have to, doesn't usually take too long before whoever your financial advisor is, and that's my wife, that if after a while, if the funds are not coming in, but they're going out, then the red flag comes up pretty quick, and you have to maybe change or quit or whatever it happens to be. So that's the background behind independents or shop instructors, if that makes sense.
Yes, it sounds like independent does have the benefits of flexibility, but also challenges of you're pretty much running your own small business and might have difficulty with those equipment sales.
Yeah, and that's what I put forward in the presentation is, the trials and tribulations of being both, and understanding your marketing and what it takes to be profitable and how to price your courses and such. And number two, how to teach courses as an independent. I mean, I live in Jacksonville. As an independent, I taught at Blue Grotto, which most people are familiar with. I went to Blue Grotto in 2011 42 times. Well, guess who raised the red flag? My wife. Because you got to balance your life out, But you also, if somebody's there to kind of give you some understanding of, so how do I do that? How do I do both and become successful? That's what I try to do. Yeah, and I have to say SDI is very, very good at it, and I try to support a number of the agencies. And I don't mind given suggestions to independent or even shops. I have people call me from all over the world and ask me questions. And I love people visiting the Diver Supply YouTube channel and the Hog YouTube channel. So, yeah, if you're out there, subscribe. So, sorry, cheap bit there.
It's wonderful. I mean, you have so much wisdom and resources for people who are hearing this and interested to go find out and explore whether that might be right for them. So,
yeah, and I noticed today, just today, the number of people that come up, and it's funny because I had a guy walk up to the booth and said, "Hey, I watch your videos," and I said, "Oh, really? Which one do you like?" And he said, "Well, all of them." Well, there's 350 videos on the channel. And, it makes me very humble, but people say I'm able to listen to what you have to say. And I've had guys come up and say their wives, when the guy talks to his wife and says about a piece of equipment, the wife says, "Well, what did Bob say about it?" And, again, it makes me very humble about the trust people put in me, and I cherish that.
And I would be interested to talk a bit about gear, just knowing
Sure.
that throughout your time in diving, you touched a bit on how much it's evolved. I'm curious if there's one or a handful of particular innovations, whether it's the advent of dive computers or anything else. What kind of stands out in your memory as being the real game changers, if you will, when it comes to advancements in equipment?
Well, I don't probably need to talk about double hose regulators and straps on tanks and stuff like that and J-valves. That's ancient history today. But today, probably, and I would agree with the first item that came out of your mouth, was the dive computer. And to me, the dive computer, most of the time, is worn on the wrong wrist.
Which one do you recommend?
Right wrist.
Okay, that's the opposite of what I do. So
Yes,
why do you say the right?
All right. So if I ask you to show me the ascent position right now, you would hold up your inflator deflator. You would put your hand up like this to protect your head from that Portuguese man of war you're getting ready to swim into. And we're dive buddies, and I'm looking at your eyes because I read you by your eyes. Well, I can also see my dive computer right here. I'm protecting my head. Can I see that?
No.
So why do you wear it on your right wrist?
That makes a lot of sense. I never thought about it.
Yeah. And a lot of people talk about computers on consoles. Well, the shops like it versus a wrist computer because they're less likely to lose a computer. But if a student loses a computer, guess what? They pay for it. But a wrist computer for an independent instructor or a shop is an easy sell because this is your dive computer is the little devil on your shoulder or the little angel on your shoulder saying, "Oh, yeah, go, 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 go." When somebody's at 80 feet telling an open water student to come on down. Well, your dive computer's saying, the little angel's saying, "You're at 60 feet. Don't go. You've not been trained down there. Don't go." So, the dive computer probably is the biggest item I would see that, number one, people should buy after mass fin, snorkel booties, and a mouthpiece and maybe a net bag. But a dive computer. And then I would say regulators. Regulators today, oh my gosh, they just breathe so good. And a nice, balanced, adjustable regulator is gold because that breath, that's what it's all about down there. The BC's wonderful. A lot of BCs today, backplate and wings, jacket styles, and of course now the hybrids. I'm a hybrid lover, and of course the way fins have changed from split fins to multi-material flexible fins and things along those lines. Man, wetsuits. Look how wetsuits have changed. With the shark skin and the fleece and all these different things. And of course, having zippers on wetsuits, that's gold. You know, people don't realize how important, this is going to be a cheap shot, but having Lycra socks, all right, from somebody like Scuba Do-Rag, just makes putting your wetsuit on, and also a bottle of Suave coconut hair conditioner. Squirt it in your wetsuit and you slide it right on. It makes life in scuba diving so much nicer. So just little things, but probably computers, regulators, wetsuits today, fin technology, mask. Oh my gosh, look at all the mask and stuff. And so, yeah, I would probably say that's the big changes, you know, and lights too. You know.
Definitely, I don't know, I feel like we're a bit spoiled today, new divers with so many great options to choose from, but it does seem like, I don't know, I'm always, earlier today we were speaking with Mike Dudas, who, and his family, the history of them on diving the Andrea Doria, and he talked about just how those first divers on it, the deep air and the J-valves, and it just blows my mind when I hear about those, hardcore early divers and what they were able to achieve with the limitations of the equipment. But yet, I mean, diving was a lot, more dangerous back then.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, but people push the envelope when they shouldn't. People that their friends talk them into doing things that they're not equipped or they're not trained to do. That's where we see some of these stupid, I'm going to call them stupid, but sometimes they can be fatal. We have to remember that scuba is not bowling, and so paying attention to those things of letting people learn to drive in the church parking lot first before you get to the road and before you take the 700 horsepower Mustang and get on the interstate. That's scuba diving today, is paying attention, let people be kindergartners first and progress through. Don't try to make them jet fighter pilots when they should be still in, Piper Cubs or something. So, standards, and actually had the wonderful benefit of talking to those folks that dove the Andrea Doria, that were actually people who do a lot of consulting for people like Clive Cussler, the author.
He wrote Shadow Divers?
Huh?
Was he the author of Shadow Divers?
He did Serpent's Eye, and he's got like 83 books.
He did Pacific Vortex is the one about the diver?
Exactly.
Okay. That's a good one.
And, of course, he was the big Doxa, Dirk Pitt and Doxa divers and stuff like that. So, yeah, I've had the benefit of talking to a bunch of those people. And when I was stationed in Antarctica for a year, I fell in love with the Cussler books. So, yeah.
I do wonder, so when I talk to, more experienced divers now, so many of them cite Sea Hunt, Jacques Cousteau, how as, children they idolized diving growing up and they were so excited to get started. And then I also hear people expressing concerns about the future of diving and, the next generation, younger folks might not be as interested today. Do you have thoughts on the next generation of divers, how to get, inspire them to become involved and join the sport?
It's very true. I mean, now you've got 14 kind of bicycling out there, e-bikes and all that. You've got especially all the online gaming and stuff like that. But the beauty of scuba diving is, and especially with different agencies like SEAL Team that one agency has, Future Buddies that others have, these are great programs to introduce young people into the realm of scuba diving and the underwater world. I work with a lot of adaptive divers, people with autism, but disabled divers, people, I'm considered 100% disabled, veteran myself. Things like tinnitus, mine basically goes away when I'm underwater. That gives me such a a sense of calm and relaxation. And my wife can always tell when I've been underwater because I have a much calmer demeanor. But introducing new people into the realm of the underwater world through those programs and tri-dives and camps and the different scout programs and such. I think building those programs is a smart thing to do. And to me, if an agency or a manufacturer, wants to explore, helping, open new young people, those are good programs to look at and building up. So, yeah.
It's wonderful because we do hear about the barrier to entry and the cost of, all the wonderful effective gear we do have making it a bit tough. But I'm also just wondering if you have words for advice based on your experiences for someone who might just be starting their diving journey. If a recently certified open water diver is listening to this, just any words of wisdom, whether it's safety or anything else you might want to convey.
Have your own, I call it scuba underwear, mask fin, snorkel booties, mouthpiece, snorkel, that sort of thing. That needs to be yours, not hand-me-down, not snorkeling fins for scuba diving per se, but I would say that's your scuba underwear. If you're looking at buying scuba equipment, it doesn't mean you have to spend a gazillion dollars on equipment. There's very reliable equipment out there at reasonable prices. Computers. Buy a computer. Buy one that's easy to see. Buy one that's easy to use. Take a look at where you're going in scuba diving. You may not need the $2,000 dive computer with a $400 transmitter when a simple $300 to $400, $500 dive computer will serve you for a lifetime. Technology is changing fast, but there's really good dive computers out there. Regulators, things along those lines that really make it relaxing for breathing so that you're not working. And probably the strongest thing is don't let people talk you into doing things that you're not trained to do, you're not equipped to do. Because there's very simple signals that mean the same underwater as they do up here, and a head shake right to left saying, nope, not going to go there, not going to do that. When somebody's trying to talk you into going into that overhead environment that you're not equipped or trained to go in, or go to a depth that you're not, again, trained or equipped to go in, do the baby steps. Learn, experience, and enjoy the underwater world. So
on that note,
that'll continue to make you a Dan fan.
Well, thank you. And I think just hearing that, new divers should have the confidence to call off a dive at any time, particularly if, they're being pushed beyond their limits, I think.
Can I tell you a quick little secret?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I tell this to all the students. Look, so if you get out on a dive and you're anxious, nervous, and you don't want to dive, okay? So, Elena, have you been sniffling this morning? Have you had a little sniffle going on? Are your sinuses bothering you maybe a little bit? Mm-hmm. All right. So if that was to happen to you, or you were to tell me, my sinuses are really kind of bothering me, do you think a dive master or a dive instructor is going to force you to dive?
No.
You don't need to tell them, I'm scared. Mm-hmm. Just say, I just don't feel well enough to dive right now. I got this little thing going on.
Gosh, that's a wonderful tip. So
it's a cheap tip, and it works. And it's nothing, if you're not ready to dive, don't dive. Enjoy the boat. Be a bubble watcher. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Eat pineapple and stuff while everybody else is diving, and hang out in the sun. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And live to have many more wonderful dives.
Yeah. I'll tell you a little quick story. I was diving down in the Caribbean, and we were out on the dive boat at a resort, and the diver next to me knew I was an instructor. And when she sat down to gear up, and she reached down and pulled her gauge around, the joint at the first stage broke. Broke, and of course it's blowing and all that sort of stuff. And so, I got her air turned off real quick. And so the crew said, well, there's another dive boat out here. We'll get another regulator, and so she can dive. And so another boat came over. They swapped out the regulator, and as we moved to the back, she got up on the gunnel to do a back roll in. And when she picked up the second stage of the regulator and went to put it in her mouth, the second stage basically came apart in her hand. And at that point, she said, I'm done. I'm going to sit on the front of the boat and enjoy the sun. And so if lemons happen, make lemonade, and enjoy life. So, sorry, but
that was a great story.
Little stories like that really have made my dive life so rich.
Well, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your stories and advice today, Bob. It's been a pleasure, and thank you so much.
No, I enjoyed it. I appreciate you guys inviting me up, and again, I think Dan does great work, and we appreciate you guys in the industry.
Thank you.